I am Alina Dochu, postdoctoral fellow at McMaster University, and the topic of my presentation today is Crimean Tatar indigenous language revitalization and language policy and Sámi lessons to the Crimean Tatar language. As you know, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed the period of 2022 to 2032 as the International Decade of Indigenous Languages to draw attention of the world community to the threatened state of many indigenous languages and to mobilize society to preserve the world's indigenous languages. And according to the United Nations General Assembly, unfortunately by 2100, more than half of the world languages will disappear. The rights of indigenous people are regulated by the United Nations General Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which was adopted in 2007. And the linguistic rights of indigenous people are defined in the articles of 13, 14, and 16 of the declaration. Particularly, the Article 13 states that indigenous peoples have the right to revitalize, use, and develop and transmit to future generations their histories, languages, oral traditions, philosophies, writing systems, and literatures, and to designate and retain their own names for communities, places, and persons. And also Articles 14 and 16 of the Declaration refer to the rights of indigenous people to create educational systems and media, and also to have access to education in their native language. And the question is, why should we care about indigenous languages? According to the linguist David Crystal, engaged with the revitalization of endangered languages, we need diversity. The arguments which support the need for biological diversity could also be applied to language, and languages express identity. Everyone cares about their identity. Languages are repositories of history, and languages contribute to the sum of human knowledge, and they are interesting in themselves. And today we will speak about the Crimean Tatar language and social linguistic situation and its endangered status and possible ways of revitalization. Crimean Tatar is a Turkic language spoken in the Crimea and Crimean Tatar diasporas, mainly in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, and in small communities of Canada and the US. It is very important to mention that Crimean Tatars were formed on the territory of the Crimea, uniting Cumans, Kipchaks with Goths, Greeks, Italian, Bulgars, Khazars, Pechenegs, Tauris, Scythians, Sarmatians, and Alans. It is very important to say about that because Russia tries to say that always saying that Crimean Tatars, they are not indigenous inhabitants of the Crimea, saying that Crimean Tatars came from Asia, but it is not so, because Crimean Tatars are native inhabitants of the Crimea, and they formed on the territory of the Crimea. And according to the statistics of 2001, 260,000 Crimean Tatars lived in Crimea, 150,000 in Central Asia, approximately 5 million lived in Turkey, and 22,000 in Romania, 6,000 in Bulgaria. Even if we will see at the numbers, 5 million in Turkey in comparison to 260,000 Crimean Tatars in Crimea, it is clear for us that such difference and such a huge difference in diaspora and in Crimea, and diaspora in Turkey and Crimea, because of the Russification by the Russia, the policy of Russification, and many escaped to Turkey, beginning with the first annexation of the Crimea and other waves, and also deportation of the Crimean Tatars. And that is all saying about the endangered status of Crimean Tatars itself and their language. And also, there are 3 dialects of Crimean Tatar language, Northern, Southern, and the Middle, and standard language is written in the middle dialect, but unfortunately with the deportation of Crimean Tatars, their dialect areas were mixed because Crimean Tatars were deported, and in the places of deportation they lived in different places, not close to each other. And that's why there is a mixture of dialects, and and also another threat to the language. And the right side you will see Crimean Tatars people, a picture of Crimean Tatars, and it is well known that Crimean Tatar language has a degree of a severely endangered language, stated in the Atlas of the World Languages in Danger, and Atlas designates 6 degrees of endangerment, and according to the Atlas, severely endangered language is spoken by grandparents and older generations, while the parent generation may understand it if they do not speak it to children or among themselves. There's 2 stages remains until extinction of the Crimean Tatar language, critically endangered and extinct levels of the language. And as to the history of language policies, there was a flourishing period of the Crimean Tatar language during the Crimean Khanate period. It's 14th and 18th centuries. Unfortunately, when the annexation of the Crimea was taking place from Crimean Khanate by the Russian Empire in 1783, and subsequent Russification period, and also another tragic death, deportation of Crimean Tatars from Crimea in Soviet period, and subsequent policy of Russification in the Soviet period in 1944 and 1991. With the independence of Ukraine, slow development of the Crimean Tatar language was taking place, but unfortunately the annexation of the Crimea by Russia in 2014 the state of the language worsened, and Russia declares the official status of the Crimean Tatar language together with the Russian and Ukraine, but it's only a declarative status on paper, as everywhere is a Russian language, and many Crimean Tatar classes closed, and Crimean Tatar representative voice majorist media are forbidden, ATR channel, journals, Outlet, Kırım, etc. Also, Crimean Tatars are persecuted and discriminated by Russian authorities, and also according to the statistics, the minimum number of hours of Crimean Tatar in secondary schools after the annexation was reduced. It is known that after 2014, approximately 31,000 pupils have been studying the Crimean Tatar language as a subject, and only 3% as a medium of instruction. And Russian war in Ukraine and annexation of the Crimean, Russian war and subsequent dispersed settlement of the Crimean Tatars in Ukraine and other countries in other threats to the endangered Crimean Tatar language. Among the main problems, the absence of status of the official language and the risky level of the language, the absence of legal language policy. Other important problems are specified in the recently accepted document by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. It is the concept for the development of Crimean Tatar language is the need to return to the Latin font, codification and standardization of the Crimean Tatar language is needed, and necessity to open secondary school classes and faculties at higher education establishments. Absence of the Crimean Tatar official spelling, but now work is doing in National Committee, Spelling Committee of the Crimean Tatar language. Also, lack of human and educational resources, lack of teachers and textbooks for the secondary schools and teaching materials for the higher education establishments, lack of the translation and specialized dictionaries, lack of funding, including state funding. But fortunately, there are positive efforts to preserve the language with the recognition of the Crimean Tatars in 2014 as the indigenous people of Ukraine, and the adoption by the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, the law on the indigenous peoples of Ukraine in 2021. And also the concept for the development of Crimean Tatar language was adopted, and the strategy for the development of Crimean Tatar language. And in 2021, the Crimean Tatar language on the Latin script was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, and it consists of 31 letters, and based on the decisions of the Kurultai of Crimean Tatars National Congress and the Supreme Representative Body. According as to the Crimean Tatar alphabet, it has a difficult history because till 1928, it was the alphabet was in Arabic script, and from 1928 to 1938, the first Latin script was adapted to all Turkic languages, and from 1938 to 1997, it was a Cyrillic script, and in 1997, the Supreme Council of Autonomous Republic of Crimea adopted new variant of Latin alphabet. And in 2021, the Latin script was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. And in 2023, the National Committee on Problems of the Crimean Tatar language was created, and also created the Crimean Tatar Spelling Committee to work on the spelling problems of the Crimean Tatar language, and also the work is doing on comparing of the Crimean Tatar Wikipedia, and also developing the Crimean Tatar National Corpus. It is very important to have a Crimean Tatar National Corpus for linguists to do researches and to save the language. And also the Center of the Crimean Tatar Language and Literature is functioning at Taras Shevchenko National University of Kiev, and specialties of the Crimean Tatar language at Taras Shevchenko National University of Kiev and Vernadsky Tavrida University. And also open Crimean Tatar public organizations, open like Krym Iris, Krym AV, and online translation platforms and dictionaries are developing. And Indigenous language revitalization issues could be seen in education programs, various language domains, indigenous media, digital resources, radio, TV, language documentation programs, language policies, and legislations. And the experience of many indigenous people on revitalization of their languages and establishment of language rights could inform other indigenous people. I'm questioning whether the Sámi languages revitalization belonging to the one of the developing examples of language protection, including language policy, could be applied to the Indigenous Crimean Tatar language context. This is especially relevant in connection with the movement of Ukraine to Europe. And I will tell a little bit about my postdoctoral project at McMaster University. And in my postdoctoral research on revitalization of the Crimean Tatar language at Ariel Research Center of McMaster University, we are looking for ways to revitalize the Crimean Tatar language in language policy primarily and education programs. And also lessons that could be taken from other indigenous people revitalization steps. We conducted a survey. What do Crimean Tatars think about the revitalization of their language among Crimean Tatars living in Ukraine, Canada, and the US? We are analyzing the vitality of the Crimean Tatar language and opinions of community members on possible ways of revitalization of the language. And we could look for after the analyzing of the survey, we could look on our revitalization programs that could help Crimean Tatar language and the language policy direction developed in our postdoctoral study is needed for the revitalization of indigenous languages, and it is a novel approaches to the reclamation, and it could be seen, for example, in the recognition of the official indigenous language status, in establishment of language rights, adoption of language acts and laws, creation of linguistic committees, and language policies could be world language policy, regional language policy, and local language policy. For world language policies, for example, it is a United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People adopted in 2007, and Article 13 on linguistic rights, and on a regional level, it is, for example, the European Charter for Regional or Minority Language in 1992. And among local language policies, local policies of the countries, for example, the Sámi Language Act in Finland and Norway, Indigenous Language Act in Canada in 2019, the Maori Language Act New Zealand in 2016, and the Welsh Language Act in Wales in 1993. And before they will go to the Sámi lessons, we will say a little bit about the Sámi languages and social linguistic situation. On the right side, you could see the map of distribution of Sámi languages among these 4 countries, Russia, Norway, Finland, and Sweden. And it is known that Sámi languages relate to Finno-Ugrian languages spreading from central Sweden and mid-southern Norway to the Kola Peninsula in Russia. According to the Council of Europe document, the Sámi are the people, their culture and languages in 2015. The number of ethnic Sámi is probably nearly 100,000, 50,000 to 65,000 live in Norway, 20,000 to 40,000 in Sweden, about 8,000 to 10,000 in Finland, and about 2,000 in Russia. An increasing number of Sámi live outside the Sámi territories. Norway, Sweden, and Finland have recognized the Sámi as an indigenous people, except Russia. 10 Sámi languages can be distinguished, and among them, Akala Sámi is extinct. Languages can be divided into Eastern and Western language groups. The last speaker of Akala Sámi died in 2003. The most widely used language in all 4 countries is North Sámi, and near half of the Sámi speak Sámi as a native language. And according to the Atlas of the World Languages in Danger, Sámi languages are distinguished from definitely endangered to extinct levels of endangerment. You can see which of the languages of what degree of endangerment. And as to the history of Sámi language policies in Norway from the 17th century, there was no interference to the Sámi language. Sámi languages, and in 18th, 19th century's policy of Norwegian assimilation, the laws that forbade to use the Sámi languages in school, laws on ownership of land and citizenship, demand to learn Norwegian. After the Second World War, the National Sámi movement, and in 1988, an amendment was made to the Norwegian constitution, known in Article 110 in the Sámi Language Act, to preserve and develop Sámi languages. Formation of the Sámi Parliament in 1989. On the right side, you can see the picture of Sámi people taken from a rare historical photo. According to the Sámi Language Act in Norway, both Sámi and Norwegian are languages of equal worth, and the Act ensures the use of Sámi languages in administrative districts. And also, the Act describes the use of languages in different domains, from judicial system, health and social sector, church services, and municipal administration and media. And also, the Sámi Language Council is available. The Parliament appoints the members of the council and determines who is to be the chairman and vice chairman of the council. And also, in education, the Sámi may choose to have their children instructed in Sámi or Norwegian. And in Finland, before and after the Second World War, there was the assimilation period, and in 1991, the adoption of the Sámi Language Act, and it recognizes the Sámi as an indigenous people and guarantees their right to autonomy, the use of languages in all government services, the formation of the Finnish Sámi Parliament, which has a great autonomy from the Finnish Parliament. It is also very important that it has a great autonomy from Finnish Parliament. And according to the Sámi Language Act of 2003, the use of languages in large and several municipalities. The Act also ensures the existence of the Sámi Language Council, the Sámi Language Committee, Sámi Language Bureau for translation and for other tasks, provided in a Sámi Language Advisor, supervision, monitoring, and reporting bodies. As to education, parents can choose their children being instructed in Sámi as the language of the instruction, or they can select Sámi as a subject. Also, Sámi has the right to receive primary and lower education, secondary education in their mother tongue, and also have the right to instruction in Sámi language. There are important languageness programs helping to revitalize the language, and they offer daycare in Sámi and even outside the Sámi districts. the children fully immersed to the Sámi languages. That's why they call the language nest programs. Sámi municipalities receive funding for Sámi language program from national budget. And as to the Sweden, the period from 1898 to 1925 it was a Swedish assimilation period, and 1992 the Sámi parliament was created, and it monitors the language and education, distributes state funds, and gives advice on language use. In 1999, the status as minority languages were given to the Sámi languages in Sweden by the Minority Language Committee. Nowadays, a mother tongue program exists in education, giving the possibility to choose Sámi as a mother tongue language for the 9-year regular program at the Sámi schools. And in Russia, the Sámi language has no recognition and official status in local, regional, and national levels. And according to the language reclamation, according to Sámi language policy, Sámi languages have an official status and recognition at least in 3 countries in various municipalities or areas of Sámi spread. They are one of the indigenous officially recognized languages in Europe and one of the most developed at national, regional, and international levels. The Sámi have their representative bodies at national and international levels. For example, the Sámi parliaments in Sweden, Finland, and Norway, and also the Sámi Parliamentary Council at international level. And there is a cross-border cooperation between the representative bodies of the countries. Sámi Parliamentary Council represents Sámi internationally. Also, the Sámi have monitoring bodies at the Council of Europe, and also there is an indigenous media, the existence of special institution for promotion of education in Sámi languages. For example, a Sámi college in Kautokeino, it offers education model and teacher training 4-year programs of training for basic school teachers and a 3-year kindergarten teaching training program with opportunity of distance education. In 2000, it was the Sámi e-learning institution was created in Finland. And but there are unfortunately difficulties in the language reclamation efforts. Among them are demographic factors and distribution in different countries. The use of Sámi languages in traditional Sámi areas or municipalities, steps are required to extend beyond these municipalities. They need to develop strategies to protect smaller Sámi languages. Because of the small number of users, there are lack of opportunities to learn Sámi in schools. Changes needed also in language educational policy. The Sámi language should be the medium of instructions in schools. Also, as usual, there is a lack of funding and resources. And orthographic standardization should be fulfilled. It will be difficult because there are so many languages, and it's difficult to fulfill because of the distribution in different countries. And also domains of language use should be enlarged. And what lessons should be learned and what questions should be asked for the revitalization of the Crimean Tatar language in accordance with the Sámi example? To my mind, is an official legal framework for the Crimean Tatar language should be developed. The Crimean Tatar language has not any indigenous language acts. It is only in 2014 Crimean Tatars were officially recognized as an indigenous people of Ukraine, together with Crimean Karems and Grechaks. And finally, in 2021, the law on indigenous people of Ukraine was adopted. An official status for Crimean Tatar language should be declared together with the Ukrainian language. An official status should be declared for the indigenous Crimean Tatar language. Otherwise, it will be difficult to revitalize the language, to have an indigenous run education. Considering the right of indigenous people to self-determination on self-government according to the United Nations Declaration on the rights of indigenous people, is it possible to establish an officially recognized indigenous Crimean Tatar self-government parliament or autonomy? We ask whether is it possible to develop an indigenous Crimean Tatar autonomy in the Crimea within the borders of Ukraine and functioning of the independent Crimean Tatar language policy. Because with the autonomy and parliament, it has more rights to, and the language will be saved and revitalized. The opinion of Crimean Tatars on the language policy should be asked. The development of the right language policy and government should be negotiated with Crimean Tatars in the form of survey, interviews. Is it possible to develop the Indigenous Language Council solving language issues? In 2022, the National Committee on Problems of the Crimean Tatar Language was adopted in Ukraine, and we ask whether the existence of language council is possible within the indigenous autonomy of parliament within the borders of Ukraine, solving some minor problems of the Crimean Tatar language, like giving service in Crimean Tatar language, for example, translation service and presenting of Crimean Tatar in different governmental bodies, and there should be also cross-border cooperation within the indigenous representative bodies of the world with diasporas. Monitoring bodies should be existed international indigenous organization with independent experts with the aim to monitor the linguistic rights of the Crimean Tatars, and there should be fair disposal of funding among Crimean Tatar representative bodies, giving them the right to distribute funding by themselves and report on it. There should be an obligation of Ukraine and European organizations to fund. Also, there should be an indigenous-run education policy, and this should be established legally. The existence of special institutions for promotion of Crimean Tatar education, like Sámi Education Council, Sámi College, and Kaltakina, should be established. Education Crimean should be given to all Crimean Tatars and who is eager to get it even beyond the areas of spread, and should be indigenous-run. Indigenous languages should be the medium of instruction in school, not subject obligation to Ukrainian government offer services and fund research projects on indigenous Crimean Tatar language. Combination of efforts of the government, community members, scientists, politicians can influence the development of the successful language reclamation in the sphere of language policy. And I'm asking you, thank you for listening for my presentation, and I'm asking you, could you please give your feedback whether this presentation on Sámi lesson will be useful and helpful in revitalization of the Crimean Tatar language? Please click the link to ask the questions. Thank you for your feedback and for your listening. Thank you very much.